Hey everyone, I have finally got the camera into the fish room and wanted to make a video of this tank in particular. This is what I call the rock stack tank. It's a single live bearer species, the Picta guppy or Swamp Guppy, and then a couple different cory species. There's Hastatus, the diamond cory. You can see some right there in the front. There's 5 of those. There's also 5 of the pygmy cories. And the reason I wanted to talk about this tank today was that I was on a live chat with Glenn Hawkins last week. For those of you who don't know or haven't been to Glenn's channel, I would encourage you. He's got a great channel. He's got a ton of awesome planted tanks that he's running. He's also very much into live bearers, as I am. And we were talking about this Swamp Guppy last week, as I had sent him some replacement individuals for some, he had bought this species before. And he had said that they were doing okay, but they weren't really thriving. And so he had asked, you know, what my water parameters were and if I would do a video on it. And so I wanted to talk about mainly water quality and use these guys as an example. And I think as fish keepers, obviously we're totally dependent on the water that comes out of our tap. And unless you want to put in a really expensive RO system or something like that where you can modify your water, we're a bit limited or confined to the water, to species that thrive in the water that we have available. Obviously, fish have a kind of a spectrum of water qualities that they will tolerate or even do well in, but some species are very particular. Obviously, the Micropoecilias are some of those fish. Now, Picta is kind of one of the easier ones, but even so, some people kind of struggle with this this species, keeping it. And I've never struggled. In fact, I was worried when I bought it, and it's turned out to be almost my easiest species to keep. So if what I did is I went ahead and tested my water today for the purposes of this video, just to kind of remind myself. So for those of you who don't have something like this, I'm sure most of you do, but I really suggest that you buy some of the API testing kits. The nitrates and ammonia stuff is very critical when you're starting a tank. And the KH and GH, I use them just to kind of reassure myself of what I'm dealing with and how the tank's doing. I don't do it a whole lot, but again, it reminds me when I'm thinking of another species or something that I want to put in one of my tanks. I'll kind of test this and it'll kind of confine me to not go crazy. Clearly, when I show you what my numbers are, you'll realize that discus are not in my future. There is no way that I could run discus. Now, swamp guppies, yes. And so when I tested my water, I got a 13 degrees of KH, which is your carbonate hardness, and then 18 degrees of GH, which is your general hardness. And there are other people that have done videos on this. Basically, your KH value is your calcium carbonate, generally how acidic or basic your water is. And then your GH is how many ions, usually dissolved ions, there are in your water. And that one is really pretty fixed. So a reading of 18 tells me that my water is hard. I'm on the low end of marine water, but I'm still in that I'm right up there with African cichlid kind of water systems, which when you go back to this swamp guppy, you know, these are fish that can, you know, a lot of people in the hobby are raising them as freshwater species, but they're really, I think, probably truly a brackish species, or, you know, exposed to a lot of salts in their water. And originally they're from coastal regions of French Guiana, Suriname, you know, northern South America. And so probably mangrove floodplain kind of stuff. And so when we look at the water quality and we say, wow, you are hard water, it makes sense that even though it's fresh water, it's nearly brackish with the amount of ions and everything that's in it. So one of the things going forward that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I've been trying to track them down, is try out some of the other more difficult Micropoecilia species, such as the paramali and others, and see how well they do. And for a lot of people, those other species, they'll do okay for a while, but they tend to dwindle. And I have a feeling that's a lot has to do with it. They really should be kept as a brackish species. Now, some of it also probably has to do with their diet, but I think water has a huge component to that. So that is this tank, and I hope that's helpful. I would just encourage everyone to test your water and then limit the number of species you have, or restrict them to things that are going to do well. Clearly you won't see a lot of discus or elephant nose fish for me. It just so happens that I like live bears and they do well in my water, and these guys do particularly well. So alright, well, if you have any questions or further comments, let me know below, and I hope you enjoyed this and that it was helpful. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.